welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 494. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado, it's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, what's up, buddy?
Oh, not much. Just moving my car every couple hours because the giant hailstorms have been passing through Denver. But you know,
now it's not your car. To be fair,
true. It is the rental car that I rented because my neighbor trashed my car. Back then, they hit my car, but yeah. So,
and you still haven't got your actual car.
Oh, it hasn't even started to be fixed because the insurance company has not approved the repairs. But
that has been quite a debacle.
Yeah, they're the ones paying for the rental car under Colorado law, so you know it works out.
Okay, fair enough. And good luck with that. My goodness sakes. So for this week on the show, we've got one of our famous Q&A episodes. Our patrons have asked us a bunch of awesome questions. We're going to get to as many of them as we can today. And we love these shows. We get to talk about not just the specific set that just came out, but a wide variety of Magic and even sometimes life topics. And that's what we're going to be doing today on the show. Before we get into that, a few things to cover here. First things first, our sponsor, channelfireball.com, the place to go for all things Magic related on the internet. Whatever you need, they are going to have it over at CFB, including War of the Spark. Hey, if you need War of the Spark, you can go there. You can get singles or sealed product right now, live on the site at channelfireball.com. And of course, while you're there, you got to check out the free content. I always talk about this every week, and it's because it's so good. Everybody that is listening to the show ostensibly has some interest in improving at Magic, at learning more about this extremely complex game that we all love. Well, there's a whole lot on CFB in written form. Also, podcasts like this one. In fact, one of the podcasts that's kind of under the Channel Fireball flag now is Humans of Magic podcast by James Su. And this is an interview show. So if you like listening to some of your favorite content creators and players and Magic personalities talk about, well, really their personal life, honestly, then you can check out the Humans of Magic podcast. And if you're listening to this show and you want to hear more about me or more about Luis, we both were guests on it separately in the past few episodes on there as well. So you can hear about our childhoods. I listened to your episode, Luis, too. I didn't learn anything because I know you pretty well, but it was really funny to hear you talk about your brothers.
Yeah, who you haven't met.
Because I know them, and your descriptions of them were very good. I was like, yeah, that is exactly it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
chatting with James on his podcast was awesome. It's definitely the most well-researched and professional and well-produced podcast I've ever been on.
Come on.
Most entertaining.
Come on, dude.
Probably the one that helps you improve at Magic the most.
Oh, come on. He doesn't even try for that. That is absolutely ridiculous. Although I do have to say, he was extremely well prepared. Oh, yeah. He had notes and messages and all this stuff. I was like,
he
wow,
asked me for multiple references who he could message to get more background info.
Yeah, so there you go. But yeah, check out that. That's a cool interview show you can get. And then, of course, if you want to become more engaged with the community at Channel Fireball, there's a couple of ways to do it. There's the Discord, channelfireball.com/Discord, which is a whole bunch of different rooms covering all different types of topics about Magic and the Magic community and all that kind of stuff. And then if you want to engage here, I'll just be like Luis. If you want to engage with our brand, you can sign up for the newsletter. channelfireball.com/newsletter is where you can go to sign up for that. Luis writes it every week, and
we've actually got two now. So I write our newsletter every week.
Commander one?
Yeah. So my newsletter focuses on usually like something standard or modern or whatever catches my eye that week. But we also have a Commander newsletter written by Eric Levine, who the Raging Levine, who he's been involved with Commander for many years, and I think he does a really good job. He writes Commander columns for CFB, of course, plays a ton of Commander. So the Commander newsletter, you can find them both at channelfireball.com/newsletter, and I have enjoyed writing them, and I think that they're a nice little boost of extra content.
Yeah, Eric, he's also a OG judge, as many old school Commander players are. You see him out at the highest levels of tabletop play. acting as
yep,
a
he's,
judge. He's
driving
a very
to
good judge.
Magic Fest, Kansas City this week. I actually have to get him my new. He's funnily enough, he edits the newsletters also. So, or rather, he does some of the like analytics work on them. So I have to get him my newsletter early so he can drive to Kansas City to judge at the Magic Fest.
Does he measure the ROAS?
ROAS.
ROAS. Is he the one that tells you what your ROAS
yes, actually,
is for the newsletter?
So, okay, look, Marshall's making fun of me because I'm learning a lot more about marketing now that I'm working in the marketing department at Channel Fireball. I'm the VP of marketing now, and ROAS is return on ad spend. It's one of the metrics that you use to determine whether your ad campaigns have been good or your marketing campaigns have been successful. So if you paid $100 and on a campaign and it drove $700 worth of sales, your ROAS is 7. So, but Marshall just loves it, and all he talks about is ROAS. He's like, "Oh, did you improve your ROAS today?"
I just tease him because it sounds like such a made up thing, but it does make sense.
We do have a ROAS-lesque, as we call him, in the set right now in War of the Spark, the blue-green mythic. So he has an extremely high ROAS if you first pick him.
He does. In fact, it doubles when he leaves the company. Oh, man. All right. Well, so make sure you check those out, the Discord, the newsletters. And then also, of course, we got to thank our patrons. The questions for the show this week come via the Patreon. This is the website where you can go to support the creators and the things that, make your day a little brighter, that you learn something from, that you get some value from, however it is you want to view it. This is just one of the ways that people are able to make something for not the broad audience, not, an entire radio station worth of listeners or a TV show or something like that, but a little more narrowed down. But it turns out if that group is big enough, it can support itself, and this type of content can get made, which is something that never used to happen before. It's a great thing. So patreon.com/limited resources where you can go for that. And I also want to mention, just in case people don't know, you can get the show a lot of different ways. Most people tend to hone in on one way to get it, but hey, if there's an easier way for you to do it, A, you can let me know, but B, I can tell you, you can get the show right now on Spotify, on Pandora. We're on that. We're actually on the pilot program for podcasts on Pandora. We were lucky we got chosen for that, and we're on it now. iTunes, any of the normal iTunes or any podcast app or anything like that, you're going to find it on there. You can find the show on YouTube. The non-set review shows I have kind of like a placeholder logo and a background on it there. It's mainly just for audio, but I am looking at ways that we can potentially expand that out to a little bit more visual content on there repeatedly. You can even just download the show. Like you can just download the MP3 file and put it wherever, you can put it, burn it onto a thing, whatever it is that you need to do. And of course, you can listen to it on the web at lrcast.com or at channelfireball.com when the show goes up. And we have a web player that you can play it right off of Yield Internet there. So lots of ways to get the show. It's always free. So just go and get it, whatever works best for you. And one last thing. We did the draft walkthrough last week on the show, and I had asked for feedback, and we got a lot of it. It was great. The LRcast subreddit, thank you so much for the feedback there. I went through and read all of that, and then also on Twitter a bunch, which was great because Luis and I were really curious to see how it went. Overall, positive reviews. People liked it, and they wanted to see it again. But there was definitely some real concerns, with making sure. They said, I think that we overall that we did a good job of keeping them up to speed on what was going on a pick by pick basis and on what we had in our deck, but that we have to really make sure we do that. Like if we were off of that even a little bit, then it would have gotten really confusing. Yeah. So, but we're going to do it going forward. We're going to make a few tweaks to it, and I'm going to actually try something out with the video version of the show. A lot of the feedback was like, well, why don't you just do a draft video? And it's like, okay, I get it. Like that would be fun. And I understand. And in fact, Luis does them and I do them both for Channel Fireball. So if you do want that type of content, you can find it. But we're really trying to adapt this for audio only, right? Yeah, like we're trying to say you can be driving in a car and get a similar experience.
The goal is to make this a different experience than a draft video, because there's no shortage of draft videos or streams if you're sitting at a computer or get to look at your phone or tablet and want to watch them. This is for someone who is going jogging, or commuting to work, or taking their dog for a walk, or whatever it is. Washing dishes is some people. I've definitely heard people say they listen to the podcast while doing that.
Oh yeah,
I'm just surprised our listeners wash dishes. But no, maybe that's just me projecting. But so I think that, trying to hone in on that experience and make that its own thing is what we're looking for. We're not just looking to make a worse version of a draft video. So we're going to keep working on it. And, I think you will see it back again, but we're not sure what form it'll take in. We'll likely, like this time, wait for it to be a somewhat mature format before doing it, because that way people have a better idea of what's going on. You do that. I think you do that week 2 or something in a format, people are not going to be able to follow it very well.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I forgot after a couple of days, but I was reminded on the subreddit to post a picture of the final deck with the sideboard. I did that on Patreon. I made it an open post, so you don't have to be a patron to see it. And I'll put that in the show notes as well, just if you want to see what the deck ended up looking like. Okay, let's do a crack a pack real quick, and then we'll get into the questions. So, Vor of the Spark. What's our best rare? Is it still Oketra? Is that the nuts?
Yeah, I'm on Ugin, pick one, pack one over Oketra, but I think that Oketra is obviously nothing to complain about.
I will try very hard to open us an Ugin then. Battlefield Promotions, our first card out, 1 and a white combat trick, fine, but not great. Yeah. Crush Descent,
not even fine.
It's whatever. I mean, it puts a counter on the creature, right? Come on. Got to get the ball rolling somehow on some of this proliferate. Crush Descent, our preview card, womp. Sucks.
Yeah, that is extremely bad.
Chain Whip Cyclops, 4 and a red, 4/4. You can pay 4 mana to make something not be able to block. It has proven itself in the exact situations that we described when we first saw it, in that it is a replaceable 5-drop and not a priority under really any circumstance. But if you do end up with it on the battlefield and some extra mana, it can affect the board. So it's it's a D+ or whatever it is. C-. Snare Spinner, Little Spider, still not what I want to first pick.
None of these cards are close to
not even close. Here's one that I would at least put in a separate pile, which is Toll of the Invasion, card that you and I both love in this format.
Yeah, I do love that card. It's what I would take now. I would be disappointed to first pick this card, but it is certainly a card that stands above the rest right now.
Burning Prophet. That's the 1/3 for 1 and a red, and it gets a couple of bonuses when you cast a non-creature spell. I'm still on Toll over Burning Prophet, but whatever.
I am too.
They're in the range. Oh,
they're both in the same kind of tier.
Cancel that order. Obnixilus's Cruelty is our next card. So
all right, this is it's one of the best commons, if not the best common, and basically once I've seen that, I feel pretty good, because if you're going to first pick Obnixilus's Cruelty. Yeah, you're going to have an okay first pick. Obviously, you'd rather take an uncommon or rare, but first pick and Cruelty is nothing to sneeze at.
Is there another common you would take over it? Would you take Jaya's Greeting over it?
Jaya's Greeting is the only other card, I think, that I would heavily consider. I remember some people thought Spark Harvest might be competitive with Obnixilus's Cruelty.
They seem to
have backed off that.
I do still think that, actually.
They seem to have seen the error of their ways.
No, they have not. I do think it's competitive with Obnixilus's Cruelty. Again, the decks that I play black with, Planeswalkers can be a big problem. So I prioritize that. But whatever, Cruelty is just as good or better. Our next card is Jaya's Greeting, by the way.
All right. I mean, I think in general, I would rather take Cruelty than Jaya's Greeting. Pick one, pack one. But I think it's pretty close and kind of depends a bit on your color preferences.
Yeah, I know that some people would rather take Greeting, right? It is a more efficient spell, and the Scry 1 is quite powerful. But Cruelty at only 1 extra mana more, plus the exile, plus the extra 2, air quotes, damage that it does, really does kind of let you deal with threats that Jaya's Greeting doesn't. And I think I would still stick with Cruelty, but it wouldn't fault you for taking Greeting. Next is Totally Lost. Totally not taking it. Centaur Nurturer. No. All right. So let's see if we can find an uncommon or a rare to knock off one of these premium removal spells. The first one is another premium removal spell. It's Shaundra's Triumph.
Shaundra's Triumph is quite good. It's a little better than Jaya's Greeting.
Yeah, hitting Planeswalkers is better than Scry 1.
Better than Scry 1.
It's not a lot. These cards are very comparable.
No, it might be enough to make me want to take it over Cruelty, but we'll see what else is in the pack.
Price of Betrayal. So another card that hits Planeswalkers. But no, I have that one relegated to the sideboard of my decks, and I only bring it in if I really have a problem dealing with something on the other side. Our next one is Samut Tyrant Smasher. That's the one that gives your creatures haste, and you can -1 Samut to give a creature +2/+1 and haste until end of turn, and then scry 1.
Yeah, this is a fine aggressive play, but I have really not liked Samut in most decks.
No, Angrath is where I want to be in the aggro decks. So much better.
Great.
Yeah. So that leaves us with still these 3 removal spells and then a rare, and it will not be bumping any of them off. It's Deliver Unto Evil. This is the 2 and a black sorcery. Choose up to 4 target cards in your graveyard. If you control a Bolas Planeswalker, return those cards to your hand. Otherwise, each opponent chooses 2 of them. You get those ones and you exile Deliver Unto Evil. No.
Yeah. I think I'd probably still just take Cruelty here.
Yeah, so we have it between Cruelty and Triumph, right?
No, actually, I don't know. Triumph killing Planeswalkers is pretty good.
It really is.
You're kind of getting the best of both worlds there. Yeah, I would just take the Triumph here.
I think so, too, especially the play patterns play out such that Triumph, a lot of these Planeswalkers are 5/2, so they're at 3, and if you can Triumph it, you can actually stem the bleeding in a pretty meaningful way, by not letting them get that second activation and then potentially a third with some Proliferate down the line. And then, of course, it's super efficient at killing creatures. I think Triumph is the pick here as well over Cruelty. That flexibility just matters a lot to me in being able to finish off Planeswalkers. Yep. Okay, let's get into our questions and answers here. First one comes from Daryl, who says, what are your power rankings for pets? I assume Luis has dogs pretty high. Curious where the other animals land, hopefully on their feet. Like cats.
Well, dogs are certainly number 1 by, it's close but clear. Mm-hmm. Cats are number 2. I tend to like pets that you can actually interact with. And look, I don't want to anthropomorphize my animals too much. Like, I understand that, we've got a chinchilla and she doesn't really care much about us. There's not much of a meaningful bond there, but still, mammals like a chinchilla or, a guinea pig or a rabbit seem like they connect a lot better than a snake or a bird or, well, I guess some birds are actually pretty talkative, but we had this may be another thing, but we had bearded dragons and tarantulas growing up.
What the? I didn't know that.
Yeah, my dad is a science teacher, and he always loved having those things. So bearded dragons are lizards that are about, I don't know, a little less than a foot to a little a foot and a half long or so, and weigh a couple pounds, a couple 5 pounds or whatever.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
Yeah, and then we had tarantulas, which are pretty sweet too. Those I did not feel much of a connection with those, but honestly, if you love your pet, that's cool. I think that whatever brings you the most happiness. I think dogs are the best because they reciprocate that enough. It feels like they actually care, and you're part of their pack, and you can just see that in how they act. So,
yeah. I'm always conflicted because I, kind of share custody of a cat. And so I'm really attached to that cat.
Yeah.
But, and so I would say cats are my number 1, but also I dog sit for a dog a lot that I absolutely adore. And it is just different. The dogs just, cats just are kind of they don't care, man. They're just they want to be pet when they feel like it. But dogs, you can really interact with in a much more direct way. And I guess I'll just call it a tie. But I think I just love all animals. I've always been a huge fan of them.
Well,
grew up with them.
My answer might have changed at midnight yesterday when our dog pushed open the door to my daughter's room, jumped on her bed, and started licking her face while she was was asleep and was being operative.
Yeah,
so.
After you have to do the routine of getting your daughter to go to sleep in the first place.
The whole song and dance. But
yeah, all right.
Our Julie dog is a good dog, but
she is a crazy animal.
Yes.
Andre says, in Magic the Gathering, there are many worlds and planes, and the planeswalkers can travel between them. What is your theory, if any, of this is somewhat true in our real universe? Do you think our dimension is the only one? Do you think planet Earth is the only planet that holds intelligent life? What are your thoughts for these questions that science may never be able to answer?
I've actually talked about this in a sign-off before about my belief system.
Your simulator.
As it were, yes. I think that it is more likely than not that we are in some kind of simulation, because I think if we had computers powerful enough to simulate an entire world, we just would. And, like look at The Sims, right? That's just, they're trying to do that. And I think that given all the the fact that if there were able to be simulated worlds, there would be, countless numbers of them. The odds that we're in one of those worlds seems reasonable to me. Mm-hmm. Part and parcel of this, before I come off sounding too crazy, is that this doesn't change any of my actions. I think it's really important to note that whether or not I think we may or may not be in a simulation, I'm still going to act as if, this is our world and everything's real, because it's kind of, I think it's pretty harmful to not act that way. Mm-hmm. But I think that some of the answers you can find could be there. Like, yeah, I think that there is, a good chance that there's life on other planets. I think that, our dimension, if we are in a simulation, is not the only one insofar as other worlds may exist. But I also think it's more of a thought exercise than anything else. Like I said, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this, and it doesn't really, or doesn't at all change any of my actions.
So if you were in the Matrix, you would stay in the Matrix.
Oh, totally. Getting out of the Matrix. I mean, Cypher had it right. Leaving the Matrix just seemed like such a bad idea. He was eating that steak and was like, this just tastes just as good as real steak. Like, why should I put myself through all this?
Yeah. One of the questions that stands out to me as the more like immediate answerable one is do you think planet Earth is the only one that holds intelligent life? And I mean, my instinct is no, not even close.
We're sure that this planet does have intelligent life somewhere. I mean, I've read YouTube comments. Is all I'm going to say.
Next one comes from Janusz, who says, Cube is a major thing for you guys. Why not include a side note while doing set reviews? Like, oh, and by the way, I could see this card being a good addition to any legacy or vintage Cube, etc. Limited is also Cube. So cheers, my friends. We do sometimes. I mean, I guess I don't have it like as like a strict, flag saying this could be in Cube, but I will bring that up occasionally, just like, this is too narrow for the limited set or whatever, but this card could see playing Cube. I guess we could note that a little stronger if we really feel that way.
Yeah, I kind of don't know if that's true, because yes, there are definitely cards like Ugin is a good fit for a lot of cubes, right? But Cube is what you want out of a cube is kind of individually focused. Like, for example, we've got a vintage cube, but we just don't have bribery in it. Just for the sole reason that bribery, I think is a very fun card. And right. I think it incentivizes bad things. So that's not to say bribery isn't powerful enough. It clearly is. It's in every vintage cube on Magic Online, and I tend to take it. But I don't think that, us saying like, yeah, Ugin or Oketra or whatever would be good in Cube. Yeah, I don't know. People should just kind of figure out what they want out of their cubes. I think you could make an argument for many, many cards in Cube. And so mentioning that just seems like it would kind of, get wearing.
Sure. Janusz has a follow-up question. If a Skype meeting is longer than 1 hour, I tend to start doing mails, drift away, play with pens, draw something, etc. Podcasts tend to be long, and Marshall sometimes has this mesmerizing voice. What do you do to keep your thoughts together and stay focused? I guess this is for you, Luis. What do you do, by the way, when you're intently listening to every word that comes out of my mouth and formulating the perfect response?
What? So
it's such a tilt.
When you say stay focused, I'm not sure how to answer this question. But
Come
look,
on, man. This is serious. This is our job.
From time to time, sometimes I'll have like a Twitch stream on, or be in a cube draft, or check Twitter, or
answer Paul's messages.
Oh yeah, Chian message. We're in a Facebook
chats that I'm also in.
Me, Chian, and Marshall are in a Facebook, in just like a group chat, and Paul will ask us a question, and I'll answer it during the show, and Marshall will respond, "Paul, we're doing the show. Stop asking questions, or he'll keep answering you."
And then Luis will usually say something like, "No, it's a fine time. Go ahead." And I'm just like, "Whatever." You better not be watching freaking streams or doing drafts while we're doing the show.
Okay, I don't do drafts while we're doing the show.
You're already You're already distractible enough.
I really am.
I have to take your phone away when we do the shows when we're on the road, because I can actually reach out and grab the stupid thing. I would do it here too, but I can't reach it because you're too far away.
We're going to have to make a compromise. You have fewer monologues and I won't be distracted.
Look, you're allowed to interrupt,
Oh, I do.
You can just jump right. All right. Next question comes from Zachary, who says, you guys ever played in an LGS game day or Planeswalker weekend? If so, how'd you like it? If not, the one for this last set was limited War of the Spark, but the special rule that Planeswalkers can be cast with any color of mana. What do you guys think about that? I heard about this. I didn't go to it, but Adam did and our friend Thomas did. And I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be like too grumpy, but that sounds not great to me. Like making the Planeswalkers, just all castable and you can just take anything. I don't know. That seems to be fundamentally kind of messing with the way that limited works and just saying like it's the kind of thing that sounds like it'd be fun, but I don't think it would actually play out that great.
Yeah.
You just take the great Planeswalkers? Like there's no...
I guess so, yeah. I feel like it would make draft like a little bit less interesting to me. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's no tension.
I think if it's fun to you, go ahead and play it. That's my attitude with almost everything. But I guess there's a reason I probably haven't, gone and tried to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some pretty cool stuff that you can do at LGSs. I unfortunately don't have a regular LGS currently, mainly just because I'm too often not in town. Ferran says, hey, Marshall and Luis, what is the sweetest play you've made in War of the Spark Limited? Mine was using role reversal to exchange my 1 loyalty Saheeli for an Ugin, and next turn, spark double that Ugin. Opponent only endured for a couple of turns. Did you have any sweet plays? I got to think.
Yeah, I know mine. I played in the team draft, the Twitch Rivals draft challenge where you and a teammate, I was teamed with Gabby. We each did 3 drafts and combined your records. And in one of the drafts, I had this busted blue-red deck that had Rao, Sarkhan, Shaundra, and Saheeli for, for value. And I had to play a turn where I got to -7 Shaundra and then to flip 7, deal 7, and then minus Ral and copy Heartfire. I just nugged my opponent for like 20 damage, just without even attacking. It was pretty sweet.
That is great. I'll have to think of mine. I nothing comes to mind off the top of my head, but I'll remember something at some point.
That does remind me of giving a little PSA here. Mm-hmm. This applies to actually to our listeners who play Standard more than anything. If you have a Gruul Spellbreaker in play, which gives you and Gruul Spellbreaker hexproof on your turn, and you attack an opponent's Shaundra, Shaundra has to either shoot herself or another Planeswalker.
Whoa, really?
Because you have hexproof and Shaundra deals damage whenever her loyalty is removed to a creature or to a Planeswalker or opponent.
An opponent can't be targeted, and they can't target themselves because they're not an opponent, so it's Planeswalker.
If Shaundra's the only Planeswalker in play, and you do 1 damage to Shaundra, she kills herself because she removes 1 counter, has to shoot herself again, removes 1 counter. So I would just keep that in mind because that's an interaction a lot of people don't know, and the Shaundra just reminded me of that. I figured it might as well let people know about that.
I did not know about that. Next question comes from Ben, who says, a couple of episodes ago, LSV mentioned that people should do what they love, referring to how people spend their time. He used Frank Carson as an example, magic math versus renewable energy math. As someone who always wonders if I could be spending my time better, to better my health, fitness, relationships, the world, etc. Can you elaborate on this a little further?
Yeah, I do have some more thoughts here. One is that I encourage people to reach out to other people, and I especially encourage people in this day and age to make use of electronic communication. And part of it is that I have friends, and you do too, Marshall, all over the world thanks to Magic. So that kind of trained us to be better at that. But look at me, you, and Paul talking in that group chat. We're all better friends because of it, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And it's actually meaningful. Like I was the best man at Pat Cox's wedding, and it was because we would talk on G-Chat about nonsense, not just Magic, just nonsense, Mm-hmm. And that not only feels like, but it is a legitimate relationship. And likewise, to use an example, my mom is very good at texting, right? She gets it. Like she likes to text, and we'll talk to each other, and it's not just like, hey mom, I'm coming to visit on this time, or asking her questions like, where's my birth certificate? Or, the kind of like questions you ask parents when you need something. Mm-hmm. But I tell her about just nonsense, right? And my dad's not good at that. Like when I talk to my dad via text, it's to coordinate plans or, to ask for information like, hey, we're thinking about visiting, which dates are you free? That sort of stuff. which is fine. That's just, how he chooses to interact with it. But as a result, I talk to my mom much more in a more meaningful way. And, that's the same is just true. I think almost everyone can reach out to their friends and family a little bit better. And I find that, you don't have to live 5 minutes away from someone to have a good, meaningful relationship with them. Obviously, you do still want to see people in person. And I do make an effort to see all of these friends who I talk to in person, right? Like, we see each other a bunch of times a year at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the communication in between those is also really important. And I get some people just don't do that. Like face-to-face or bust is kind of how they operate. But honestly, I feel like my life is much more fulfilling given like there's probably like 10 people I talk to every single day using, text or email. Well, mostly text or like GChat or Facebook Messenger, that sort of thing. And my life is better as a result, and our relationships are better as a result.
Yeah. It's also just interesting because the constant internet communication can feel overwhelming or even just get very negative at some point where your brain kind of filters for the negativity. So I think it's important to do what you said, which is to focus on the fact that you can also use it for very, very good things.
And then when it comes to how you should be spending your time, that's a very personal question. I mean, if you've got bandwidth, if you're one of those people who can, work your job, make sure you get enough exercise, make sure you have meaningful relationships, and you have time left over, like, yeah, maybe if it feels right to you, think about, donating some of your time or energy to charity or to helping other people, because that will make the world a better place. But I'm never going to fault someone for feeling like they aren't able to do that. And, like you really have to decide kind of what you value. I also don't think it's bad if at the end of the day, you're like, I'm tired from all the things I do. I want to watch some TV, or I want to read a book, or I want to just relax on my lawn chair and have a beer. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think one of the things we suffer from in the modern age, and I totally do too, this for a fact, is I always feel like I should be doing something. Mm-hmm. I always feel like I should be getting something done. And I don't love that about how we live right now. So spending time doing nothing, I think, can be pretty valuable as well.
All right, I might try that later today.
Well, I said it was more of a problem for me, but
you did exclude me. Brett says, "Hey guys, I'm an exclusively limited player, and Arena has been great since the local scene is not great where I am. Unfortunately, I continually find myself frustrated by Arena's play till you lose system rather than getting to play X games. When I am able to play in real life, I can play as many games with my deck as I want, typically 10 or more. And it's one of the ways I feel that I learn the most. On Arena, variants can toss my deck and my money in a matter of minutes. Any advice on how I can get the same deep dive experience I get in real life on Arena without just mindlessly spamming my credit card? I would try direct challenge, but there's no option for using 40 card decks yet, or maybe I'm just missing it. And no, you're not. I looked into it too, and currently you can't do that. I really hope that does happen at some point, because this is one of the ways that we often recommend for LR listeners to get a little bit of extra practice in with their decks, is to sync up with other LR listeners using the subreddit or the Discord or, Twitter or whatever, and then challenge each other on Magic Online is what we used to recommend. And you can still do that. And then you could just play as much as you want. You can tweak the deck and then go back and do it again. And it allows you to really have a kind of a more immersive experience with the deck that you've drafted or built from a sealed pool, or to try different builds and different things like that, and kind of get more bang for your buck. As it stands now, if you're only playing on Arena and you're only playing limited, you're kind of stuck. I guess one thing I would say to focus on, and I mean, I don't mean this like to sound snarky or anything, because sometimes variance does happen, but yeah, win more, right? I mean, I think you're doing the right thing, Brett, by listening to the show and applying yourself in that way, because I mean, that is one of the benefits. It's not one that we talk about that often on the show, because, our approach is, you already love Magic, but you're going to love it more and enjoy it more if you're winning more, right? So that's why you're here. And that's what our goal is for you as a listener. But it also means you get to play more. And especially in the models that Arena uses, you do just get to play more. So it's not just a value play from getting prizes back and, recouping some of your entry fee. It's also, a straight up, you get to play more Magic, situation as well. It's tough though. I mean, he's right? Like, I mean, if you just, have some bad luck and scrub out of an event, that money's gone. And there's really, on Arena currently, there's no way to work with that.
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of feel like Arena draft The draft queues, like they make you play too many games.
Yeah, I do feel that way too. It's a lot.
Because you know, like play till you win 7 or lose 2 or whatever, or 5 or 3 or whatever the numbers. Sorry, 7
5 and 2 and 7 and
7 and 3, 5 and 2 feels like a lot to me. I know it's different from like Paper, where you could just play 10 if you wanted, or Magic Online, where you can like sign up for like the guaranteed 3. But I think that I don't know. I think that practicing to try to increase the number of wins you get on average definitely helps. I think that if you are in for a more replayable experience, honestly, like you could try Magic Online. It's harder to get the like competitive queues to fire, but the intermediate ones still do. But I would really just focus on just getting better, and kind of, you know, one of the lessons you're going to learn is that when you sometimes when you get mana screwed twice, you're just out of a draft, and that is how it goes. So that can be valuable too, you know?
Yeah, it can be. It's funny too, because I think that you touched on something at the beginning there that a lot of the listeners will relate to as well, which is if you lose, it's kind of an excuse to get to draft again. And, you know, I think most limited players really, really love the draft portion the most.
Yeah.
And the game's, you know, second place. And it's interesting because it looks like Brett isn't in that camp, you know, and also just trying to keep this relatively expensive hobby under control can be difficult as well. Make sure also, Alex or Brett, excuse me, just as a way to get a little more value is that make sure you're hitting your gold goals, your daily quests. Make sure that you always refresh those if they're not 750s, and make sure you're just taking the time to hit those, because those equal drafts. They just do. They you get up to 5,000 gold and you can do a best of one ranked draft. And so if you make sure to take just a little bit of extra time to hit those, you can turn those into drafts pretty quickly, and that'll help, keep you in the queues and keep you drafting. Alex says, hey guys, I'm one of the guys who makes the Possibility Storm puzzles on Channel Fireball. And if you haven't seen these are where you're presented with a situation in a game and you have to try to figure out how to win, how to get yourself out of the situation or whatever. It usually presents a complicated board state with complicated rules, interactions. And for people that love that stuff, these things are great. He says, do you either of you have a story you'd want to share about stealing victory from the clutches of defeat with an oddball puzzle style move, or alternatively, any favorite unintuitive limited interactions you'd like to see in a puzzle? Keep up the amazing work, friends, Alex says. Thanks, Alex. I don't know, off the top of my head.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
I've had to do some pretty. Okay, yeah, you do.
No, go for it. If you've got some ready to go.
No, I was saying I don't have any off the top of my head. I don't remember stuff like that.
One is at my first or second Pro Tour. I had a Sensei's Divining Top Out. This is Champions Block Constructed, and I was dead next turn, and I knew my top 3 cards were bad. So I cast Cranial Extraction on myself. So that's kind of like surgical extraction, whatever. Like, you name a card and you search and exile all copies of that card. And I cast it on myself to shuffle and named a bad card, so I'd be less likely to see that card.
Ooh, I like this. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't find anything and I died still, but it was
of course.
It was a pretty cool play.
That's a sweet play. Did you have another one, or?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another one that ended up happening, but go ahead if you've got one.
I took a quick look, by the way, just to give you an idea of the ones that they do. The one that went up on the 13th of May on CFB, and I was like, oh, I see. Yeah, this has a lot going on to it. I'll give you a short example. You can check out in fact, I'll put a link to this one if you want in the notes. But this is one where Massacre Girl is going to be put into play, and you have to figure out a whole bunch of different ways that Massacre Girl triggers go off and interact with different things on the board and that kind of thing. And for example, one of the interesting things was there's a Dreadhorde Butcher and a Massacre Girl. And the interaction between Massacre Girl and Dreadhorde Butcher means that Dreadhorde Butcher dies as a 0/0, regardless of what size it was prior to that. So it doesn't deal any damage.
Nice.
Right. So like, that's not obvious at first glance. You think, okay, it died. It had 2 counters. I'll do 2 or whatever. And that is not the case. So little stuff like that. And like I said, I'll put a link to that in the notes. Let me just write that down. Puzzle. And you can check that out for yourself. Thanks, Alex. We got a question from Andy. What's your life total, Bentley? It's just the best name. If you ever walked away from Magic content, not that I think you would, what would you be doing instead? Where do you think you'd be if Magic did not exist? Obviously, Luis would be a high-ranking vice president of marketing at some firm. Just selling ads somewhere.
I mean, I think like game design is definitely something that is very connected to this world, but is distinctively different, or is distinctive from it, or distinct rather from it. I could definitely see myself, doing that. I mean, I already do that, but it is something I could also see myself doing without doing any sort of Magic. I think I would be a lot less happy if Magic didn't exist. I know that much.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's funny because I think that I would have found something probably creative, something like similar to starting a podcast. It just wouldn't have been about Magic. I just would have eventually tried it for something else. And if I found an audience, try to make that work. But I think similarly that I would be so much worse off if Magic didn't exist for so many levels. But the primary one is just the people, right? Like I would have a much different circle of friends than the one that I actually do have. And I really, really value the one that I have. So I think that would be the biggest difference. Also, it means that walking away from Magic content is kind of like maybe, okay, sure, you don't make the content anymore, but like I've been around this community long enough to know that people don't just fall off the face of the earth. You're still friends with people, even if you don't make the same stuff. Next question comes from Atipong, who says, hi, Marshall and Luis. This one is for Luis. Do you wish to be in the MPL? Why or why not? And if yes, how do you foresee getting yourself there? Good question, Atipong. Thanks for the great content. Come on, you want to be in the MPL, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be cool. Like, I'm very competitive and wanting to be involved in the highest levels of Magic competitive play is something that's driven me since I started playing on the Pro Tour. So I certainly would be, would be interested in pursuing that. I don't know what you have to do to be in the MPL because nobody does. That has not been made clear. I've been winning a lot this year, and I also make a lot of content and, I think do a lot for Magic. So hopefully that helps. But honestly, there's no way of knowing whether that even matters at all because it is felt fairly opaque as to kind of what the paths are. But I'm not going to stress about it. I'm just going to keep doing what I do. I'm going to try to do well at tournaments. I'm going to try to, continue making Magic better and adding value. And, if that ends up working out, then awesome. If it does not, then it does not. And, I'll be in the same spot I am now, which is not in the MPL. And I can live with that.
Well, maybe if you got your ROAS high enough, they would take you. Do you think that's a limiting factor? Because you've been doing fine at the pro level.
My ROAS is very good, I believe, for Magic because
that is really funny because it really is. Because the investment is zero.
Yes, I am not paid by Wizards of the Coast to promote Magic, at least not really, not at this time, and I do quite a bit of it. So yeah, maybe they're making a really wise decision because they're vastly increasing their ROAS as things go. So
it is funny. That is one way to look at it. They are like, think about how much value you've generated for Wizards of the Coast over the years without pay. I mean, sure, you've done some stuff for them or whatever, but that is a staggering number for sure. Robert says, hi guys, I really enjoyed the live draft you did the last episode, and I've been finding War of the Spark pretty tricky to draft, particularly balancing my creature count with planeswalkers, card draw, and other powerful cards that don't necessarily impact the board state much. And I did find the discussions of which cards to take mid-pack really helpful. Marshall, I was wondering how the deck you drafted ended up playing out and whether the benefit of hindsight there has any picks you'd wish you'd gone a different way on. Really funny, Robert. I came to the computer the next, because that deck was sweet, right? Like I said, I put a picture on the Patreon. Anybody can see that. You can look now. The deck was nice. Like we were both really happy with it. So I sat down the next day to play the deck, and I realized that was the day that they shifted it over from War of the Spark being the best of one format to Dominaria. So it just gave me some packs and said, move along, kid. So I didn't get to play a single game with that sweet deck.
I so told you should have said you went like 7-1 with it or whatever.
Yeah, I decided to tell the truth instead, Luis. So,
The ROAS on telling the truth is really not very high.
We might need some more metrics for life than that. One thing that did stand out, though, about Robert's question was whether the benefit of hindsight would have made me, wish I had gone a different way. And I thought of that, and I don't really think of it like that ever. I definitely revisit picks and reevaluate cards, but I don't look at it and go, I should have picked something different unless it's really clear to me that like in week 1, maybe I'll pass like an obscure card that I haven't played with yet. And then later on down the line, I'll go, oh, that card was really good. And I just didn't know it yet. And my deck would have been sweeter, if I would have taken it. But I try not to get into that trap of being results oriented to like a one draft level where I'm just like, I should have taken this other card. And because you have to remember that it's hard to contextualize it again when you look back. You had limited information about what you should take there. And generally speaking, unless I'm just, not paying attention or misclick or something, I'm at least trying to work my way through that. Still, the constant evaluation part is still relevant, Robert, for your question. But yeah, I didn't get to play the deck. It sucked. Let's see. Where's the next question? Where did he go? Chris says, hi, Marshall. Hi, Luis. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Love the show. I have recently taught a new friend of the game, and he's and he's really enjoying it. However, he is struggling with card evaluation. For example, recently, he wanted to splash Ill-Gotten Inheritance in his Azorius control deck, and he had heard the card was good and argued it would win him the game eventually, which is true, I guess, says Chris. He was already splashing black for Ethereal Absolution and had a gate, Colossus, so win conditions were not an issue. I struggle explaining to him without sounding condescending or just telling him what to do. Any advice? Yes, Chris, we have a lot of it because we've been doing this exact thing for a long time and have faced the same struggles, right? And in fact, have tried really hard to go against them. Luis and I don't believe in just simply telling people what to do. We want to try to teach you how to do it so that you understand the concepts and can apply them not just in that sequence or in that scenario, but in others as well. And in this case, I like to lean on the tools that we talk about on the show because we've picked them because we think they're the most important ones. And a good example in this case would be quadrant theory for this one. And it will help your friend understand for himself why a card like Ill-Gotten Inheritance is not only unnecessary, but also potentially a liability in a deck like this. And you would have to combine two concepts, I think, to really get the point across. The first one is quadrant theory, like I said, having your friend understand the scenarios where the card's good and understanding where the scenarios that you need to shore up for a deck like that, namely when you're behind in this case, and that you want to try to keep yourself from getting behind. And if you do fall behind, having a way to get yourself back out of it, neither of which the Ill-Gotten Inheritance does in this scenario. But you also need to hit on the concept of timing, and meaning that, a turn 4 Ill-Gotten Inheritance has the potential to have a big impact on the game because you have the longest chance for it to stay on the battlefield and get as many triggers as possible, and also build yourself up to that big 6 mana activated ability, where if you're splashing it, you are by no means guaranteed to cast it on any specific turn. And when you are splashing it like that, you tend to end up playing it late in the game where it's actually at its worst because there's a lot of turns that have gone by and there's not that many left potentially for you to get those big triggers, in which case you may be playing it as something like a drain you for 5 for 10 mana. And that's not at all where you'd want to be. And you can, again, go back to quadrant 3 to help your friend understand that. So I definitely appreciate that Chris is trying to not sound condescending here, because that is one way to turn off a friend or a Magic player very quickly to the game, is to make them feel as if they're stupid or that you know everything or whatever. But if you can present these tools, then you can kind of give them the ammo that they need to make that decision and help guide them to that conclusion rather than just handing it to them.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Luis. Josh says, hi, Marshall and Luis. Yeah, everybody's like wondering which one of the things you mentioned before that you're doing right now.
To be fair, I wasn't doing any of them. I was just waiting for the opportunity to sound like I was.
Yeah, you were just ready to pounce. Josh says, hi, Marshall and Luis. Brand new patron here. Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate it. I've been really enjoying watching Modern recently, and I really want to get into it. I've played a few times with a friend's mono green Tron deck, so I'm in the process of acquiring the cards to build my own. However, I am really struggling with the sideboard. Welcome to Modern, Josh. I am guessing off multiple lists, but I was wondering what process you go through when building the sideboard for constructed deck and any tips you have for me specifically. Thanks for everything you do. Keep up the good work. Luis, he is wading into a very deep pool here.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I can give you two things. One is what you should do, and then I can tell you what I do. And this is why we have a team, ladies and gentlemen. So what you should do is look at each matchup and figure out how many cards you need to take out. And so, like, let's say you're playing. Is it Phoenix in standard against and you're looking at Esper control? Well, that was a really bad matchup game one because all your removal doesn't do anything. You're like, lava coils and your shocks and whatnot. Your entrancing melody, any of that stuff. So you're like, wow, in order to have no dead cards against Esper, I need like 11 cards to board in or 9 cards to board in. And it's worth trying to figure out then, okay, what are like the most effective cards? And then you can do that kind of for each matchup, not worrying about other matchups. So basically building a new sideboard for each matchup, which you're going to end up with a much bigger sideboard than you actually get to play. But then you can look at the cards that work in multiple matchups, right? You're like, oh, Negate is good against Esper and Simic Nexus, and I actually do like it against Sultai. So you're like, okay, well, Negate seems pretty good then because it works. It's a good card in 3 different matchups, and I have like 6 dead cards, 9 dead cards, and 5 dead cards in those respective matchups. So I definitely need something. You also can look at how bad some matchups are, because if a matchup is sufficiently bad, then it might not be worth worrying too much about sideboarding, because you're like, well, I'm not going to get much out of sideboard because this is just an inherently very difficult matchup. And so specifically sideboarding against a matchup when you're not going to be able to improve it much doesn't really make sense. So that's kind of like the process I would recommend doing. Usually I just kind of pick out a bunch of cards I like in the sideboard and then see if the numbers work. But that's not what you're supposed to do. And that's when you have Raptor yell at me and make a real sideboard. But,
and tell you to do it properly. Yeah. Now, unfortunately for Josh, he's decided to jump in the deep end of the pool of Modern, where you wish you had 25, 30 sideboard cards rather than just the 15. And you really have to make a bunch of tough decisions, similar to the one that you just mentioned, Luis, about kind of cutting your losses and saying, okay, that matchup, I'm never getting it to be good anyway, so I'm just going to ignore it and hope I don't play that. You have to do that for a lot of different archetypes in Modern.
Yeah, and for Modern, you kind of have to pick your battles. So for Modern...
Yeah, that's what I said. Pick your battles.
Yeah. So you're not going to be able to cover all your bases because there's just too many decks. That's why some people have said you should have a 20-card sideboard in Modern. And
so what advice would you give to Josh then, given that, I mean, he's going to those are really tough decisions to make, right? It's not easy.
I think that the most relevant decisions to make for Modern are, what do you expect each deck to show up, like how many, what percentages or what decks do you expect to be most common, and then which decks can you get the most improvement of? Because here's the other thing. Let's say Burn is a 60% matchup, but you have if you sideboard in, like, say 3 slots, you can bring it to 90%. Those numbers aren't right, but let's say you could do that.
Yeah,
you would do that, like because you're getting 30% there. That's huge. It's actually better to get 30% from 60 to 90 than it is to get like 20%, even if your matchup was worse for the other matchup. Basically, you care about the raw percentage more than you do what the initial matchup looks like. So, because a common mistake is to say, well, this matchup is bad, so I need to sideboard to make it good. It's not. If sideboarding can bring a 40% matchup up to 60%, or can bring a 60% matchup up to 90%, you still rather just take the 30%. it's generally better just to have, more of a game than it is to worry about a good or bad matchup, because overall you're still just talking about percentages. Right. So if you're playing a deck that has like a really bad Tron matchup and you can't improve it that much, you can just forget about it. And if you've got specifically like blue-white has some like really effective sideboard cards, against something like Burn, for example. Yeah. You get to board in like Timely Reinforcements or something. So you might make sense just to have high impact cards rather than to try to cover too many bases. Like Negate is not a card I like in Modern because it's just not a good card in any matchup. Like it's just okay. Whereas I would rather have just all Stony Silences, Rest in Pieces, Stony Silences, Rest in Pieces, Timely Reinforcements, like the cards that give you a 20% swings, not cards that give you 5% incremental edges.
Right, but make you feel slightly better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The hardest part, I think, Josh, for you is going to be figuring out the metagame that you're likely to face. So what I would recommend doing is just take your best guess and stick with it, and then, go to a tournament and then come back and figure out what you can learn from it. Because at some point, you do have to try to understand what the metagame that you're going to be playing against looks like. And you're going to have to do some of the legwork to figure out what that is. And that's a step that I think a lot of people would rather just have handed to them. But if you take that next step and say, well, what do I really think is going to be there? What are the decks that I've been playing against in this area? And that'll give you help. Good luck with it, Josh. Also, good luck to your bank account. Spearfish High School Game Club has contacted us. Greetings from the trenches, boys. It says this is more of a kind of a PSA than a question, but I think it's an important one to keep in mind. Not so much a question as a request. I hear you begin and end each episode with a reminder to sell rares to Channel Fireball, #sponsored. But we're hoping you could add a Bob Barker-ish PSA to also donate the bulk cards. I hear horror stories of Spikes literally throwing 84 cards in the trash and keeping only rares at pre-releases in a neighboring city. No doubt some of your listeners do this as well. In addition to the free club support from Wizards of the Coast, we are able to host 1 or 2 free sealed events for kids grades 6 through 12 every year using reconstructed packs entirely from donated bulk each year. I build popper decks to give to new players and have a chaff challenge tournament. Experienced players often forget the giddy excitement of when they first got hooked on Magic, but when I get to infect a dozen or more every year, and it wouldn't be possible without the jank leftovers. Could you please encourage your listeners to drop their bulk off at schools, hospitals, group homes, rec centers? This makes such a difference. Yes, we will do that. I definitely recommend, if you can find any way locally or whatever to give away the extra cards, that you do so. I mean, boy, even just like the smallest, I usually just try to find, somebody younger at the if there's a kid or something at the pre-release, but here you can have these, just these are a valuable resource to somebody, even if they're not valuable to you. And I don't mean, necessarily that you can monetarily benefit from it, but that you can make the world a little bit better for pretty low effort. And I always recommend doing that whenever you can. Also, by the way, the Spearfish Game Club says, Louis, some of the comments on your Modern Horizons set review are downright repulsive. Bullies come in all forms, and more so when shielded by the anonymity of the internet. You are awesome, and we appreciate what you do for the gaming community. I just wanted to say that again too, Luis. I saw some of those comments, and of course we've got a ton of them. I've gotten them for years of all forms. I just kind of absorb or deflect them at this point. But that I don't like that part about being so public on the internet. But it is what it is. But I think it's important sometimes to let the people that and that you care about, that, hey, they're doing a good job, and don't listen to those people. So I'm glad that they said that, and
I appreciate it. I'm not really particularly fazed by it, but that's not necessarily a good thing. I've just been that's just kind of, it doesn't bother me. I just find it really funny that people are willing to put their name and picture, because it's Facebook after all, like just publicly be a jerk. It's I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs, though. I think it's also kind of funny because people just forget there's a person on the other end of all these things. Like, when, for example, when we have someone do text coverage at Grand Prix, video coverage got scaled back. That was what Wizards decided. And we're still sending someone to do text coverage. And whenever they tweet out like text coverage updates, they just invariably get a bunch of responses that are essentially like, F you, bring back video coverage. And it's like, first of all, you're not talking to a faceless Twitter account. You're talking to like, Corbin or someone like, Hostler, who's like, he's a great dude and he's doing doing his best and doing a good job doing text coverage. I think he's fantastic at it. And he has to sit there and read those responses. And it's not even something he has any control over in the slightest. So it's just like, I don't know. People are weird and entitled.
It is weird. Yeah. I've always, struggled with how to approach those things because I'm pretty much where you are. I've heard everything and it's been so long now that I've been told all these things that I just can kind of let it roll off at this point and just shrug and to me, it's just sort of an accepted part of the job is that I'm just going to have people say these mean things about me. And I realize I shouldn't be like that and I don't like it, but also I have to survive, right? Like I have to keep doing what I want to do.
You can't just fight all of them,
Right. And so it's just one of those things where like I'm over, like you and I don't talk about it to each other. I don't post about it. Like it's just like whatever, like I just don't even want to think about it more than half a second. But I have had to do some things to not have to face it, when it comes to reading a bunch of comments and getting into all of that. I tend to shy away from it just because it's kind of like, look, I'm going to talk to the people that I really trust and care about. And if they tell me that the thing I made sucks, then I'll know. But I just don't want to put, trust or emotional trust into random people that I don't know at all on the internet. So that's just what it is. By the way, that was from Sullivan. That's the person's name. Thanks for that, Sullivan. So yeah, great stuff. If you do have extra cards, remember somebody can use them. And if you can make a minimal effort to try to find that person, maybe post in your local Magic Facebook group or on Twitter or something like that. Just say, hey, who could use these? Then that would go a long way. Ian says, hi guys, a conversation came up on your Discord. We'd like you to weigh in on. Would every major set be made better and limited with a gate in every pack?
I do not believe that those sets would be better. No.
So do you feel like that's too, like this is kind of like the similar vein to what we talked about with the Planeswalkers are colorless thing where it's like, well, these restrictions are supposed to mean something or because, I have enjoyed the ones where they've done this, though it's traditionally with gold sets already. So it's maybe more necessary, than it would be in a normal set.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the set. Like, I think that there's a lot of sets that would be better with a gate in every pack, but I think some sets it's more interesting when you can't play all the powerful cards for free or at least make it too easy. So I think that, just like everything, there can be too little fixing or too much fixing. And if you had a gate in every set, sometimes you'd end up with too much. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah. Crush Castle says, say you walk into a cube or chaos draft blind. Is there anything you always take or any archetype that you feel shows up all the time or you think you can get into it most of the time? If not, do you have any general tips for blind drafting? I know what I do, and it's tough because the two examples that Crush Castle gave are very different. Cube is completely like you have to know at least a little bit about what's going on in Cube for the most part to be successful at it because most of your picks are contextual on future picks. You can't take a thing that says I care a lot about artifacts and then just don't know how many artifacts or if there's a supported artifact theme in the cube. You have to just sort of say, well, they probably wouldn't have put this card in unless there was artifacts. So in we go and just have some trust in the person that built the cube. Where Chaos Draft is totally different. I actually sort of revert back to like base level drafting in Chaos Draft where I'm like, I'm doing card evaluations on the fly, especially if I haven't actually played that set yet, where I'm evaluating, does this thing pass a vanilla test? What kind of an ability is this? Is this a removal spell? Is this a really powerful card that is worth splashing for? Am I realistically going to be able to splash? I'm looking at like pure fundamentals. I end up drafting green black half the time I play any Chaos Draft because like those colors tend to give you like decent creatures and good removal. And I just end up like sliding into something like that, even though in a normal set, that isn't the case at all. So it really does depend to me, at least whether it is Cube or Chaos Draft or a set I haven't played. But if it's Chaos or a set I haven't played, I'll try to do my best on the fly card evaluations and try to keep it fairly simple. And if it's Cube, I try to trust the person who made it and look at the packs and look at the cards in the pack and try to extrapolate out what type of archetypes might be in the cube based on the cards that are in that pack. Again, looking at things like that care about, elves or, build around stuff, that kind of thing. And just assume that those type of things are going to be supported if they're in there.
For me, for Chaos Draft, First of all, if you open a bomb, which, if you haven't played the set before, you might not know what all the bombs are. But again, that's the on-the-fly card evaluation Marshall just mentioned. I also tend to lean towards either like 5-color green if there's enough fixing, because then you can just play whatever bombs you get opened or passed in the later packs, or like some kind of Grixis control-ish color, because I found aggro to generally not be good in Chaos Drafts. There's too many disparate themes, whereas putting together a control deck seems to be a lot easier because there's a lot more slots you can replace.
Yeah, for sure. Also, it tends to be that any of the really linear strategies that are available aren't.
Yeah.
Right? Like you open up a pack of Chaos and you're like, okay, here's an Infect card, and this is going to be the only Infect card I get for the whole Chaos draft. So I'm not doing that. And anytime you have, this thing cares a lot about how many artifacts you have. You're probably not doing that either. Well, this one wants elves. Well, you're probably not doing that either. And so all of the sort of sub-themes tend to fall away. All the build-around uncommons, most of them fall away because they've self-referenced the set that they're in, and you're left with power and toughness and removal spells and kind of cabsing it up, which is why I don't love Chaos Draft. Like, I like Cube way, way more than Chaos Draft. I know some people really love Chaos Draft, but I like it, but I don't love it like some people do because it ends up being kind of more simple for me. Brian says, hi. Do you have any tips for getting out of losing streaks?
You got to run it off. You got to run your injury off. Generally continuing to play, but I think that if you have to take a break, if you're just making bad decisions and it's compounding, then taking a break is a very good idea. But I often just, kind of soldier on. If I feel like I'm doing things right and still losing, then you can't lose forever. At least that's what I tell myself.
Yeah. One thing that I've done in the past that has worked for me is to try to get back to the fundamentals a little bit. Like sometimes you just need to kind of have like a palette cleanser draft where you just draft a more straightforward thing than what you've been trying to do, or trying to push in crazy directions, and just sort of go, okay, I'm just going to keep this simple. I'm just going to draft my 2-color deck here that has like a good curve, and I'm not going to try for any crazy splashes or any. I'm trying to minimize the things that can go wrong so that I can kind of refocus back in on what's important in Magic, which is, in Limited, which is like, your curve and combat and stuff like that. And then, after I can kind of get my feet back under me, I'll start to go back out. But it tends to refocus me and recenter me to do that. Grayson says, hi, boys. How do you appraise the value of information gathering abilities on a card that is looking at a player's hand or deck? I always wondered about this, Luis, because there's a lot of cards that have an incidental ability to like let you look at a hand, right? Like if I play Toll of the Invasion, for example, I get to take a card away. That's the main point. But I also get to know all the other cards in your hand. And it is hard to value that. I mean, I feel like, if anything, it's like maybe slightly undervalued at this point, because I don't actually value it that highly, but it does matter a lot when I'm actually playing.
I generally think that it's worth basically zero. I think that, so like, I wouldn't play a card that's like, look at the top 5 cards of a library, or you wouldn't play, 0 mana. You wouldn't play Gitaxian Probe without drawing a card. 0 mana, look at their hand, right? So it's not worth 0 mana is not enough. It's not worth a whole card. Clearly, Gitaxian Probe is busted, but that's just a whole different thing. Right. Like, I wouldn't play 4 mana 3/3. Summon, look at their hand. It just it's just not. Basically, it's worth less than Scry 1. It's not worth literal 0. Like, 4 mana 3/3 look at their hand is better than 4 mana 3/3, clearly, but it's not worth. I would rather generally have a 4/3 or a 3/4 or a Scry 1 or almost every other game action you can think of, and you're not going to see it at really good rates because it's not very fun. Like, it's it's not very fun for you to know your opponent has like an instant speed combat trick or removal spell, and it's not very fun for them to know that that you have that for them to know that that they have it. Like, and I can tell there's going to be some people say, like, what? Of course it's more fun. You get to play around it, but that's the more spiky people. Casual players, generally do not enjoy that. And, this is something that I've learned from, just testing a lot of games and working on games and like looking at cards we could make and stuff, and the feedback we get. And it's generally an unfun experience to, like, your opponent having a face-up Doomblade. It just makes it feel like, oh, what's the point of even playing this creature? They're just going to kill it. You'd rather just not have that.
Yeah, for sure. It also it also encourages people to not do things in your game.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is not nearly as fun as
if there's cards that they're incentivize players not playing things, like Standstill is just one of the worst cards. It's generally not a card you should have made. So that's a reason you don't see very good rate, like 4 mana 4/4 look at their hand, because people would play it because it's 4 mana 4/4 and they get to look at the opponent's hand for free. Whereas like Saheeli Silvering, you're kind of paying for that ability because 4 mana 2/3 flyer is not very good. And you know, it's not something that sees tons of play because it's just not great.
Yeah, it is interesting though, because that there is some value there. Like the times when you play a card that lets you, let's just say it was that 3/3 that lets you look at their hand and you see that they have a sweeper, right? Or something along those lines that you actually can meaningfully play around. Is it because so many of the cards aren't? Like if they have a Doomblade, they're going to use it to kill something. Like even if they don't get to kill your best possible thing, it's not like you're taking that card out of their hand. I mean, that information has to be valuable, right? Or is it because I asked you, like specifically you, and you're just like, well, I can infer, like I'm already playing around this stuff, or I'm going to be able to figure out what my opponent has, like, because it does. I always valued it at almost 0, but every time I play it, I'm like, that was actually really helpful. Like maybe I'm undervaluing it.
It's just, for that to be good enough, you have to end up with actionable information, and that's just not always going to be the case, you know?
Okay. Yeah, that's for sure. In fact, there's lots of times when it's just not at all. All right, let's answer a few more, and then we'll call it a show here. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of them as usual, but we'll have them on the Patreon still. Nicholas says, hi, friends. Do you have any advice on explaining why Magic means so much to me to non-Magic players? I like the challenge, the self-improvement, etc., and the internet community is awesome, but a lot of people have trouble understanding that. What do you say to your non-Magic people?
Non-Magic people?
Yeah, I was going to say, Luis and I have done a pretty good job of weeding them out of our lives, but we're really entrenched in this community compared to the average player.
Marshall and I kind of have a cheat code too, which is this is legitimately like our careers. So people take it seriously because when, you know, I'm sure when you tell someone that you do a Magic podcast for a living, whatever they think about Magic or podcasts or whatever, if you're doing it for a living and, you know, wearing the extremely pretentious watches you're known to wear, like clearly things are going well. Like,
yeah,
no, it's the same for me. Like when I say like, yeah, I'm a professional gamer and, you know, like I've got this website, and you people realize like, oh, like, whatever it is you're doing with this game, it's supporting you and your family, then people tend to take it pretty seriously. That said, if you wanted to kind of get that across to someone who, when you're a Magic player, because I was a Magic player for like just a Magic player, it wasn't my career for many, many, many years. I think you can just talk about like how passionate you are about it. Like, what do you do? Like, I don't know what Nicholas does. Like, I don't know if you travel for events, but like, it's pretty easy to say like, you know, even before I was a pro anything, but saying like, yeah, you know, I got to travel to Japan to play in this tournament. Like, people kind of take that seriously, right? Like, how could they not? So
yeah,
I think
also, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that people also kind of get like more like gaming and stuff related to that is a lot more accepted than it used to be. And it helps. Like there's documentaries like about, you know, the King of Kong or any other like documentaries about games, or just the fact that games are permeating popular culture. So people do take it seriously these days. Yeah,
they do. And I also find that like, I don't beat around the bush around it either. I haven't before. I've just said it's the best game. Like if you like these type of challenges, these type of things, it's just the best game. And I also developed like a little speech, you know, for people, because Magic is also one of the more misunderstood games, right? Like it's the type of thing that when you're in it and you play it, you understand why you like it for whatever reason that you happen to like it. But, you know, you'll still get people going, so you like think you're a wizard or something, right? And they don't, the people that aren't into geek culture or gaming stuff, and they're just like, they don't get it, right? Like they just look at it like, so what, you're like pretending like you're casting spells? Like what is going on when you go play this game? And, you know, like my little speech that I give is comparing it to chess, right? Which is like, when people talk about chess, they know that when people play chess, it's just a game that is played that happens to use these symbolic characters as the things that you move around, right? But nobody that plays chess is like, oh, I'm a valiant king and I'm going off to battle with my horse. You know, it's like that's not how people think about chess, right? There's very little flavor attached to chess. There's a ton in Magic. But for people like me, that's not the focal point for me. It's kind of cool. I actually think it's kind of cool now. But for me, you know, that is not why I'm here. And so when I explain it to other people, I'm like, well, no, like it's the same thing. Like it's the same thing with playing cards. Like, you know, when I have pair of kings, I'm not like my valiant kings have, you know, ran over your jacks. It's like, what? Like, it's a better thing. And it's the same. That's how we view the cards as well. And that helps people understand, oh, okay, this isn't what I thought it was. And then again, I just have confidence with it. I say, look, it's the best game ever made, period. Like, if you like games, this is the best one. If you don't, then you won't get it. And, you know, that's fine. I don't like to do the thing you don't do or whatever, because I'm not into it, you know. And by the way, my watches are beautiful. They're not pretentious at all.
Yeah, so basically what I would advise, Nicholas, is if someone asks about Magic, say just be like, all right, first, you're a planeswalker. And let me explain what that means. No, don't do it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you're a powerful wizard, I think is the...
I mean, that said, if that's how you want to describe it, more power to you. I don't know. Like,
it doesn't matter. It's just, I'm just trying to say how
none of us can pretend like we're not, you know, huge nerds, which is awesome.
Right. It's just, I'm not ashamed of that now. You know, it's like, it's just,
I definitely,
that is who I am.
I remember being that way when I played Magic when I was in high school and whatnot. But one of the advantages of being an adult is you realize you just do not have to care about what people think. And if someone's small-minded enough to think that Magic playing makes you somehow worse or it's irrelevant or whatever, it's great. You're an adult. You don't really have to care about what they think. You don't have to interact with them. Right. Maybe you have to interact with them. They're your boss or, you know, one of your relatives or something. But you can really be comforted with the solace that, like, they don't get it and you don't have to worry about it. Like, that's on them. That's not on you.
Yeah, it's totally good advice. Antonio says, hello, Marshall and Luis. Thank you very much for the podcast every week. It has helped me go through some very tough times in these past weeks. My dad had an accident, and there was a couple of nights where I took him to the hospital, and listening to your War of the Spark set review during those nights helped me remain some sort of sanity. Oh, wow, Antonio, I'm sorry to hear that. He says, fortunately, he is recovering at home now. Okay, that's good news. Now, about Magic, do you still think it's a king format? There's been a couple of drafts where I've gone 5-1 and on Arena with 0 rares, green, white, proliferate, and red, black, sacrifice. And I haven't felt oppressed by the rares. So what do you think about the health and the responsibility of the format overall? And he says, I meant replayability. Sorry for the autocorrect. I hope we can get some tacos together in Mexico sometime. Well, I'm in for that, Antonio. And I know Luis is as well. Still a king format, Luis?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think that it's quite to the degree that I thought the first week, but it's still, I would say that the emphasis is definitely on the high rarity cards.
Yeah. I still believe in that as well. And the next time, I mean, you don't always face them, but when you do, you're like, okay, this sucks. This isn't great. A couple more questions. Pablo says, hey, y'all, I have a question about Channel Fireball. When you return cards for store credit, do they give you 30% of the card's total value or 100% of the card's total value plus 30% of trade-in value? Thanks for the clarification. Pablo, they do not give you 30% of the value of the card. What they do is they give you 130% of the value of the card in trade-in. So you can either get 100% of what they quote you. So if they say this card's worth $10 to us, right? And you can look at this all ahead of time.
To be clear, I mean, we just like anyone else who's running a website who's buying cards or any dealer, like the buy list price is not the same as like what you would sell a card for, because that margin is important. But we list, you know, we might list Teferi at like, you know, $30 or whatever it is. That's how much we're buying for, $25. And then you would get, if it was $30, you'd also get $9 store credit.
So that's how it works. Yeah. Well, you would get but you get all of it as store credit if you do it that way.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So you can either choose to get all of it as cash at 100% of what the quoted price was, or you can get 130% all in store credit. But you will never get 30% of the card's total value.
Back when Cheon streamed, we had a coupon code 5 back, which is you use his coupon code and you get 5% back at store credit. And whenever he would talk about the 2 coupon code and I was watching the stream, which was often, I would say you could use my coupon code, which was -2 back, which means you would pay 102% and I would get the 2%. We had someone try to redeem it, though.
The sick part is people would do it. I knew it. Like, it's just, that is disgusting. Oh, man. Man, I missed you on stream. Those were good times. Starbright says, question for Marshall, what's your favorite card that does not bounce permanence? Off the top of my head, Slime Ball. What is that card called? Acidic Slime.
Yeah. Slime Ball corner pocket.
Yeah. Jennifer says, thoughts on pineapple on pizza, delicious or a cardinal sin? Thanks for all you do. My answer is delicious. What is yours?
Oh, I love it. I think pineapple on pizza. Yeah. One of my favorite pizzas is jalapenos, pineapple, and barbecue chicken.
Oh my God. I'm so hungry for that now. You monster. Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, whatever. People can argue about whatever they want, but I'm always just like, where did these people ever get the notion that there are only certain things that go on a pizza? It's like, why would that ever matter to anybody? What somebody puts on it, it tastes
You could name some things that you clearly shouldn't put on pizza, but I would say that those are things that are like quite outside the normal range of what we consider food, you know?
I agree. Also, they disqualify it from being a pizza in many cases, right? And I'm not being like pedantic. I just mean
if you put broken glass on a pizza, then it would no longer be a pizza.
Right? It's not a pizza anymore. It's a weapon. Yeah. So, yeah. All right. Anthony says, do you guys play any instruments?
Oh, dear Lord, no. I'm one of the least musically inclined people you would ever meet. Look, I listen to music. Marshall can attest to that. It's usually the same song on repeat over and over again. Yes, Hail to the chief.
Yeah.
But I think that that's just one part of the kind of the human experience that like doesn't impact me all that much. I just don't play any instruments. Never had any inclination to do so. I'll listen to music if it's on, but I don't really go out of my way to download music. I don't know. That's just a part of that part of my brain does not get triggered, you know?
Yeah, and mine does. I actually absolutely love listening to music, and I like going to shows, though I don't really anymore. I used to really like to go, though. And I did actually learn how to play the guitar for a short bit from a friend of mine who was in a band who took the time to teach me. I found it rewarding, also extremely difficult. And I don't think I have a great natural aptitude for it. I think I'm like average to below average at stuff like that. So no, not really. Although, man, the one thing, if I could like be a rock star, just like for one night in front of, like playing the song that I made for people that know that song, that would probably be the best feeling in the whole wide world. I guess we'll finish on food as well. AJ says, random question. What's your perfect salad? For example, dressing, type of greens, toppings.
I can rattle this one off easily.
Okay, go for it.
So the base is spinach because I think iceberg lettuce or romaine lettuce is just vastly inferior.
Okay.
One minute I will say strictly worse. Spinach, and I just love a ton of things. So avocado, tomato, sprouts, mushrooms, red onion, jalapenos, grilled chicken, and I like some blue cheese. I think that's about my ideal salad, I would say.
Okay, that is a really good salad. I have one as well. Like if I go to a random salad bar, that's the one I'll name here. I'll get half romaine, half mixed greens. So like the dark ones with the spinach and the other stuff in there. I like the crunch of the romaine, but I like the taste of the greens better. So I'll mix those two. And then I'll usually get garbanzo beans, red peppers, croutons for sure, because I like crunchy stuff. Bacon bits if they have it, especially if they're the real ones. I like those a lot. I will get some type of like ranch or what is it called? Dressing. I don't know. They have a bunch of different names for it, but some type of creamy dressing like that. And then pepper, like a lot of black pepper.
Pepper's
I really like that too. Yeah. Okay. Let's stop there, Luis. We got through quite a few of them, but unfortunately there will be a few that we will not get to. Apologies for that, but only so much time in the day. And Luis has another ROAS meeting that he needs to attend shortly. His numbers have been falling since he's been on the podcast, so he's got to get
dropping
back in the
like
trenches.
a rock.
Yes. That is going to do it for this episode. Thanks to everybody who submitted questions on the Patreon. I want to remind you about our sponsor, channelfireball.com. As we mentioned, 130% of the total quoted price in trade-in. You get a 30% bonus if you're trading it in. Or as I mentioned too, you can just get money. Like you can just look at all the things to your cart that you have and say, would I rather have that much money or this pile of cards? And you can make the decision that works best for your life. And then of course you can get that value.
Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
Indeed. And we have a great place to do it, channelfireball.com. Also, you can find us on social media. I'm Marshall_LR. I even have an Instagram now, though I haven't really been using it for magic stuff as much as just sort of, I don't know, random photos and stuff like that. Same thing, Marshall_LR. And Luis is LSV everywhere. You can find him on pretty much everything. Everything related to the podcast is on lrcast.com. And you can, of course, find us on Twitter or whatever. Come say hi. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out.
So my uncle and aunt visited last weekend, and they told me a pretty funny story. So they lived in Switzerland for 5 years because my uncle's he's a doctor and he worked for a pharmaceutical company in Switzerland. And he told a story about one of his friends. So his friend who working there also had moved there from England and had a baby monitor, right? You know, like one of those like little like camera, like kind of like audio setups, and you can also talk through the monitor to the baby as well, that sort of thing. And his friend gets a knock on the door at one evening, and it's the Swiss police, and they're like, "Excuse me, do you you have a baby monitor, but it's using an unauthorized frequency."
Whoa.
He's like, what? They're like, yeah, you have to get a baby monitor from Switzerland or one of the different frequency because you have a baby monitor, which he did bring from England, which uses the same frequency as the Swiss police.
Oh no.
So they're like, they've been basically just hearing what's been going on. And so yeah, we would like you to get that, as soon as possible and no longer use that one. And then as they leave, they're like, also stop complaining so much about Switzerland. This is a good country.
Wow. Awkward. Yes, Mr. Officer. That's great.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It came up because I just got a new one, and which texts me every time something happens. So when we're all gone, I'll just be getting texts about the dog barking because it'll be like, Arlo has picked up audio.
And it's because Julie's freaking out about something.
Yeah, or just like doing dog things, who knows. But yeah, Switzerland's a good country. You should stop complaining. You should be thankful you're here.